your media, where you are. Of all trades, wearing a different hat when the moment arises. You're on all the time, always on the clock, always catching up. Take care of you. Introducing Your Media, your podcast network that meets you where you are, when you need it, at your time, in your space, when you feel like it. You come first. Your Media, where you are. With every moment, you are creating an impression. Make sure it's an impression by design. This is the Transcript with Tshiamo.
And just like that, it's another week, another installment of the Transcript with me, Tshiamo. Today in studio, I have, the topic of discussion is spirituality in music. And what brought about the conversation was because I've always been a fan of music. Why? I think there's no one in the world who can't say they hate music. But when you listen to a specific song, you're able to depict or find or feel rather the emotions that were felt when making the song. And it's so, the emotions, the spirituality of it is carried through the vocals and everything. And I just find that interesting. So in studio today, I'm joined by Zothile Solo Langa.
It's a very interesting time, I know, for a lot of people. I've actually well, not recently anymore, but recently changed my stage name to Solo Ntsiwza.
Oh,
Actually,
I'm sorry.
which is no, it's absolutely fine. In fact, I think it more aptly speaks to your topic at hand because in fact I took my spiritual name and made it my stage name.
So let me correct it. It's Solo.
Ntsiwza mthimkhulu.
We're gonna need spelling there.
Yes, you are. So Solo spelled the same way.
Yeah.
And then Ntsiwza NTSIZWA. New word ka KA.
KA.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mthimkhulu. MTHIMKHULU. Yebo. Possibly the longest stage name known to man, but
it is.
Here we are.
And you know what? To be honest, Solo, that's the reason why I thought of you as well, because I was like, it would be amazing to have somebody who has, gone through the spiritual world, who understands the spiritual world, as well as is an artist or a performer.
Correct.
And I think it's so interesting to have this conversation, and I'm glad that you are having it with me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have it.
So I think let's start maybe with the beginning of let's just find out a bit more about who Solo is
today,
or
Cool.
just like how did the music thing start?
So I think from a very young age I was always a gifted writer. I can own that comfortably. And that was more creative writing, and that was in school. In English as a first language at school, obviously, plus in Zulu as a second language at school. Creative writing was actually something I was always fond of. And then love for music is something I inherited just by virtue of being the last born in the family, listening to what my parents listened to, and then obviously having an older brother and sister who really kind of influenced what I listened to. When you're the last born, you just inherit things. You don't make a lot of choices.
Also, there's a lot of time given to you.
Yeah. So
Lucky bugger.
So I think my love for hip hop was definitely extended from my elder brother's love for hip hop, and essentially I started writing honestly to impress my older siblings. I think they got a kick out of me rapping and performing people's songs, that one day I performed my own stuff, and I think it really blew their minds. And I probably got addicted to that at that point. So very early.
Yeah.
Yeah. but yeah, and then fast forward to me making an active decision to be a career musician, which is obviously a very different thing. That would have been around, I think I signed my first record deal in 2012, signed to Universal. And yeah, I mean, this is probably about 3 studio albums later as a solo act. Yeah, so really kind of walked the path
Yeah.
of an artist. Yeah, that's pretty much solo as a musician, I think.
And so when you think music,
Yeah.
what comes into mind? What
Um,
does music mean to you?
so music for me is really a mountain that I think in a lifetime you will attempt to climb. Um, I don't think anyone has ever really seen the summit.
Hmm.
I think that's how gigantic it is as an art form. You you know approach it without respect at your peril. I always say it's something that I fear. It's something that I highly respect, and it's something that I will forever be a student to. Music is definitely a very spiritual thing. It requires vulnerability. Um, yeah, and it really kind of requires a sense of self, and that's a very scary thing to do for anybody, really. At least that's my interpretation of it. So I've always had a relationship with music where, um, besides fearing it, I think I've always even had um, imposter syndrome when it came to music, right? Where I've never kind of felt that I was there or enough or as gifted. It's always like waking up and having a new conversation with myself to be like,
Okay.
I am going to fight for this thing, give of myself to this thing. And yeah, to me, it's very much an alive entity. Yeah, I know that's a complex answer,
It's a very
but that's what it
complex,
is.
and I like it because there's so many things to touch on there. The vulnerability part and stuff like that.
Mm.
So for me, like as I said, that what brought this conversation about was I was listening to music. Like I can't remember what song I was listening to,
Mhm.
but I could feel that this, like, okay, for example, I listened to Ntsiwza,
Mhm.
and I am fully Christian, like from a church family,
Mhm.
you know. So when I listen to like a song like Tongolam, right?
Incredible song.
And what made me love that song was the live version,
Yes.
because the live version has the beat, the drum, and I think sangomas as well, like in it, and there's a whole performance that goes in before we actually start, the song starts.
Mhm.
And I love how it's an outer body experience that you go through before you listen, the lyrics, and it makes sense at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to understand. Like, I wanted to understand the spirituality that goes, or that spirituality that is found in music
Yeah.
and coming from performers.
Mhm.
When when you're writing the song, when does it begin? Is it when you're writing the song, when you hear the melody, or when you are recording the song?
Yeah.
And especially for somebody who, who's gone through it, the whole journey spiritually,
Okay.
how much of that do you carry when in studio and in your music, especially like you do hip hop, which
Yeah.
is totally a whole different genre on its own.
Mhm.
So can you explore that?
Sure. I mean, it's funny because not too long ago I was having a conversation with one of my closest friends and bandmate,
Mhm.
and he was kind of speaking. He was preparing for a solo show he was going to do himself. In fact, it was this past weekend, and he was speaking about how his love for music, and how he can't necessarily explain how he knows that every time he's creating there's another power that's definitely there, right? That
Mhm.
kind of almost governs things more than he does.
Yeah.
And he said to him, if he were to ever describe a spiritual anything, that is probably the closest thing he could speak to. And my response to him was, it's funny you say that, because when I was on my spiritual journey in 2017, at least that's the year I graduated, the number of times I would be, in the process thinking to myself, wow, this feels like I'm on stage. This is the exact same feeling. I know this feeling. I know this feeling of anxiety, heightened energy, caring at a high level, feeling, so emotional, right? Just heightened, like feeling like the hairs on your skin kind of standing up. And I was like, I know this from performance, I know this weird feeling in my stomach, because this is the feeling before, we're about to get on stage. And I said to him, those similarities are definitely there. In fact, that for me is what confirmed that what I do musically is definitely a spiritual thing, I think also when it comes to, if I'm going to touch on that vulnerability aspect again,
please, yes.
For the most part, as someone who, so I believe in routine, right? So like, I'm definitely somebody who, I'm very militant. I wake up at the same time every day. I follow the same kind of routine every day, which also means from an artistic perspective, I'm one of those artists who's in studio every vessel than I am this incredible writer.
Yes.
So point is, a lot of songs write themselves. If for whatever reason I'm frustrated by, being an entrepreneur, family issues, whatever the case is, me and my wife had an argument that day. It's that much harder for me to write that day. But much like any cluttered vessel, it's hard to kind of function when your focus is kind of pulled from different places. So I say that to say, I've gotten to the point where I understand that I need to, when I get into the studio, I'm egoless, right?
Okay.
I'm not necessarily concerned about, what great acts I've done in the past, what great songs I've written in the past, all those previous anythings, whether it's award winning, any kind of accolades, because I've realized much later in life, maybe in the last 2 years actually, that stuff is clutter for me. It actually stops me from creating at a high level, So everything about and that's why I mentioned the vulnerability, because my favorite songs, my favorite music is when you can actually feel the emotion, right?
Okay.
And like many other art forms, whether it's film, whether it's a novel, a book or whatever, when someone can make you switch your emotion, that's a level of control. That's a lot of power.
Yeah.
That's a lot of power.
But I think it's because I feel like I want to understand the exchange of energy.
Yeah.
In the sense that, as you said, like if you are having a bad day, you're not creative, right? And
Yeah.
if you had to be, if you had a studio session for that day and you just feel like,
can you just do it, right?
Your
Your
initial
initial feelings would be transferred
into that song.
Well, maybe not necessarily the feelings, because it's not really about the emotion in the time of writing. And remember, because this is such routine for me, I can write on a bad day.
Okay.
I definitely can. I can walk into a studio session now and write. I've practiced this so much that it's second nature to me.
Okay.
What I'm talking about is the level of connection with the material, right? The feeling like leaving the studio and feeling like, ooh, that was another kind of session.
Okay.
And that happens once in a while. Let me be clear about that. It's
Okay.
not like every single day I'm having this orgasmic, oh wow, I can't believe I wrote such an incredible thing.
Yeah.
But the point is, I show up every day because it's, again, music is important to me. It's in the same way that I show up to Tshiamo every day. Does that make sense?
I hear it makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm there and present. Ideally, I'd love to be present when I'm doing what I need to do. Hence, I do my best to declutter before
Okay.
getting into a studio session. Now, when we take this product, let's say that's now been made, and you put it out, remember, even that, the idea that people without my knowing can be listening to music that I made in 2015 and having a spiritual experience right now as I speak to you
Yes.
is so incredible.
Yeah.
You know, it also speaks to transferable energy and what it means, like the responsibility of putting something on record, right? The equivalent of this is being recorded, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This means it will live on.
Correct.
One of my favorite hip hop artists, Lupe Fiasco, once said in an interview, if I lie on record and I sell 1 million records, I told 1 million lies. Because if you think about it, again, it's transferred energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I could, I have a song called Jubilino Likamo, which is a song about my late grandmother and late cousin. And, just last night, somebody, or day before, somebody on Instagram kind of put the song in their stories and then kind of DM'd me to say this makes them think about their grandmother. My point is that's something I made many years ago, and it still has the power to evoke
That emotion.
an emotion in
Yeah,
somebody, right?
yeah.
So then you start to feel the weight of like some level of responsibility that you carry. Now, granted, it's in the same way that like music that makes you feel alive and dance.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing.
True, true,
It's all what you're able to kind of ignite in someone. Now, why I find it interesting that you use the great Thandiso Mazwai as an example is because, and you also kind of prefaced with that statement with, now I'm a Christian from a Christian home,
Yes.
but I was listening to, like, I think, again, that becomes another thing, right? When we get to the topic of spirituality and maybe more than that, the topic of identity, because in a moment like that, when people do feel the need to be like, before I say this, let me tell you what I identify as before we go too far, that's also something that, again, just from my journey in life, not just, not just the spiritual journey, but my journey in life, I found that we carry these identities, and whether it be from a level of discomfort, whether it be from a level of pride in what we identify with, we kind of will play that card to be like, I have an appreciation of this, but this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I was raised Christian as well. I went to a Catholic school all 12 years of my primary and secondary schooling. So I know that Bible front to back. Didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, as a Christian, I can safely say to you, I'm Christian the way I'm Kaizer Chiefs. I was born into it. You know what I mean? Like that's just
you didn't choose it.
I didn't choose it. But why that is important is because you're being you're being groomed into any kind of identity is what makes your adulthood either, be more receptive of something or feel kind of reactionary when it comes to something.
True,
And that's something
true.
I had to deal with even going into, even Ngendwaso Yami,
Yeah.
I mean, I've known for over 20 years that I was supposed to go through this process. I was told as a child. But I did it in 2017. That speaks to the resistance. It speaks to the, yeah, but how? Because I am this.
Yeah.
I can't because.
Yes, correct.
Look at the, look at the crucifix.
Yeah.
And it's like identity plays such a big role in even what we're able to kind of create and give to the world. Why you felt that spiritual movement in a piece from Thandiso Mazwai is because she has owned her identity. The same message can be given to you from somebody who's not quite there, and it doesn't translate the same way.
Correct.
That's how it goes, right? Because again, it is energy communication. What we're speaking about here is how we're able to, and again, some things we were able to take in when we're ready. Sometimes it does take a life journey for one to be like, okay, this actually makes sense to me now. But the reality of South Africa is that for Black spirituality and Black identity, ours was interrupted. That's our history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't pretend it didn't happen.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So why I bring that up is to say you and I could have been born into, a family that believes in African spirituality and would have felt just fine.
Yeah.
And maybe listened to a gospel song and said, listen, I believe in Amadlozi, but that gospel song's not too bad.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's essentially kind of everything that we kind of inherit, what becomes our construct. And I know that for the past 5 years or so, it's been a lot of learning and unlearning on my side.
I like, for me, and the reason why I say that I added that prefix was because I was always, or rather than, because of you're right, the way I was indoctrinated. It was like, my growing up, Ikaya, my neighbors were they were Kunindoma and Isangoma, and
Yep.
and when the beat would go, I would like be curious. I'd go and watch and just like be part of this whole experience and just sit and marvel.
Yep.
Right. And when I go home, or when my parents found out where I was, it would be a huge thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it would just be like, but for me, it was just like, I don't understand why, because I don't see there's nothing harmful about what is happening.
Sure.
And I think that's what helped me growing up to be open and receptive to other parts. To a point where in varsity, I went and I studied religion because I wanted to understand everything from a broader perspective.
That's amazing.
And we tapped into Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, African spirituality, all that stuff. And for me, there's something about that beat and the moving of the shit. Like, if I'm one of those people, if I can sit and watch, I will join you. Do I have a calling? I don't think I do.
Okay.
But it's one thing to, and I have the utmost respect for people who've taken up their calling and embraced it, because it's such a beautiful thing.
It's also not easy.
And it's not easy, So for me, it's just like the whole thing of when, like, as I said, when I heard Tongolam the first time, I did not know what was being sung. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. But once I saw the live performance, till this day, when I hear the live performance, I'm just like, there is something deep about the song. Like, there's just a shift of, You're no longer, like when she's singing it, she's no longer Tandy. So there's something that takes over,
Yeah.
and that for me is intriguing because I'm just like, even when you're watching or when you're listening to gospel,
Yeah.
somebody will be, let's say, joy celebration, they'll sing or whatever, but the moment there's that shift of, okay, now this person has left
Yeah.
the stage and is now taken over, by the Holy Spirit, you can feel it in the song.
Absolutely.
Even when you're listening or driving, wherever you are, there's some goosebumps or whatever.
Yeah.
So I want to understand that process. Like is music spiritual, or is there spirituality in music?
So I would say to you that music as a function and medium can't be spiritual. Remember, music is used from, again, something like kind of playing the drums
Mhm.
in Dumbeni to really kind of activate a spirit, to a jingle that sells you bubblegum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the spectrum of it, right?
Yeah.
It's a function, it's a medium that has so many functions. There's definitely a space where spirit becomes important, Now that depends on, again, what's the art form, what's the purpose of it, and obviously who's carrying this,
Yes.
who's the
Right.
vessel here. All these things then play a part. Because again, when we start to speak about spirit, whether or not you're speaking to a person who, has a specific belief system or not, it's definitely a spiritual experience if I evoke a sense of pride in you, a sense of regret, a sense of remorse, missing someone, any of that. It's definitely a spiritual connection. Like I said, the young lady who sent me a message about the song that they were listening to, even that then becomes a connection because she then feels the need to tell me this, right? And again, like, it's the ripple effect. Now I'm back to feeling the responsibility of music and all these things again. That alone is its own spiritual process. So even without, let's say, the boundaries or the labels of, I am this kind of person in terms of spirituality, or that or
Yes.
that or that,
Yes.
it's still at the end of the day a a soul connection. You know what I mean? So one thing that I've often mentioned is the fact that, when it comes to like African spirituality, one thing that I think is not highly decorated enough is the fact that at its core, African spirituality is the practice of family love.
Sorry, repeat that.
So at its core,
Mhm.
African spirituality is the practice of family love.
Okay.
And why I say that is because I think we all understand the concept of a parent figure, right?
Yes.
So whether that's a mother, a father, an aunt or uncle who raised one, a grandmother, grandfather, point is we understand that concept. We understand the concept then of unconditional love. You know how much we let
Yeah.
family get away with. I'm not saying it's a healthy thing,
I don't know.
but like,
I'm not that type.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably not anymore. My point is,
Yeah.
it's definitely, you almost are born being conditioned that these are the people you can't get away from or get rid
Yes.
of.
You
You
can't.
understand what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So with that said, the ability to communicate with a grandmother who raised me before she passed and speak to her in the way that I would have spoken to her when she was here. That means when I'm celebrating and I'm happy because I've achieved something, you know,
Mhm.
being very quick to tell her what's happened, being quick to tell her if I'm heartbroken, being quick to, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's essentially the ancestral relationship. You know, it's almost the relationship of parent and child,
Mhm. Mhm.
where, you know, when it's healthy, you're able to communicate, you know, and share in common things, in common interests. This is what my development is right now, whether it's from, you know, I'm talking about school, whether I'm talking about my life. I've just gotten engaged, I have a child on the way, etc. All that stuff
Yeah.
is essentially what the African spirituality relationship really is.
Yeah.
It's we're constantly being watched over, the same way a parent would watch over the children they love,
Yeah.
but in the same way, no parent wants to be neglected. So kind of checking in, you know, I always use you know, the something very similar is like when I drive to my parents' place and I'm like, I just brought you more groceries.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing in African spirituality with your ancestors, right? Whether it's offerings and all of that.
Mhm.
Now, I mention this because obviously there's a lot of different thoughts to when it comes to African spirituality. There's stigmas, there's all these
Yes.
different things.
Yes.
African spirituality has the worst PR, is what I think.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my point is, if there was a confidence in it, an understanding of it, and again, if it was something we're indoctrinated in, can you imagine what our musical landscape would be
Yeah.
if we didn't have an identity crisis? Because that's what it is.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm.
So being able to tap into that, and again, you know, at the beginning you said, I understand, you know, African spirituality. I'm a student in it still.
Mm.
My point is, the more I'm able to grow in confidence, the more I'm able to, you know, mentally, physically, and spiritually awaken, the more there's an effect in the things that I do and touch. That includes music.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if we're speaking specifically to spirituality, that can definitely bleed into art,
Mhm.
much like when we speak about Christianity and gospel music. There's
Mhm.
some life-changing gospel music out there.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But my point is, you being able to tap into something that is yours, that's
Yes.
inherently yours. This is a lineage of a superpower that's in me
Yes.
and has been dormant for all this time. And in moments, I can evoke this and awaken this.
Mm. Mm.
That's how you get a Thandiso Mazwai doing what she does then
Yeah.
in live performance.
This is deep, man.
Yeah, this is who you invited to
And
the
you know,
show. That's what you get.
and I'm so like glad that we're having this is going the way it's supposed to go, or it is going.
Yeah.
Um, having accepted your calling, you mentioned that you accepted your calling or graduated in 2017.
Yeah.
Firstly, that journey on its own is, I'm assuming, scary, because now there's a lot of questions, and I need to understand, because you said you knew about it as a child,
Yeah.
but you only accepted later, or you only went into
Especially in the end of 2016.
yeah.
Yeah.
What was that? Why the was it an identity thing, as you said, or was it just like you're just not ready, or the timing wasn't?
Well, in the period where I hadn't taken on the calling, it was
Mhm.
because I wasn't ready. I didn't care, didn't believe. I can give you so many more reasons.
Yeah.
Why me? Also, no, I just don't wanna.
Yeah.
You know, all of that. The switch could have then, you know, if I think about it, because it is a while ago now, I think mentally the switch would have been the very specific pressures I was going through at the time. And and I think a level of curiosity did get the best of me. I should probably also mention that,
Curiosity of what would life be having.
yeah,
Mhm.
like the chance of you don't know what you're signing up for,
Yeah.
which I think is what everybody's primary issue is.
Yes.
You know, where they're just
Yes.
like, what do you mean? What do I have to do
Yeah.
to get there? We can't tell you. Then no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, then let's end the conversation now. You know, my point is that's everybody's journey in it.
Mm.
And again, I think for me, the switch was probably just because within me, I could start feeling a conflict. Within me, I could start feeling the curiosity meeting this this thing that felt like it was trying to crawl up to the surface. You know, it's obviously very hard to explain until you say it and someone says, yes, I felt the exact
Yeah.
same thing,
Yeah.
you know. But the point is, what I was gonna say is that I should also mention that 4 years before my making that decision, my older sister, in fact, went through the process, which definitely made it a lot easier just in terms of being able to climatize to what it could possibly be,
Mm.
right? I mean, we're all of little faith, you know.
Yeah.
Like, we got to see something, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember, especially with myself and my wife, like all these concerns of what does this mean career wise? What does it mean about, you know,
Yes.
us who are trying
That's
to get
my next.
married
Yes,
now,
that's my next question.
and all these different things. It really was daunting at the time, and I think, in fact, I can definitely go as far as to say the pressures that my wife was feeling, girlfriend then at the time, were definitely heavier than me. See, what tends to happen, and how it's sometimes explained, is that, again, because it's a family, you know, it's a threading of family, you know, in terms of traditional spirituality. Your family knows what buttons to press.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
And the buttons were being pressed with my wife,
Mm.
girlfriend at the time. Turns out that was one of the buttons you needed to press to get me to get in.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, talk about knowing someone, you know, because it's not like I hadn't felt pressures before,
Mm.
but I was fine with shoving them off.
Yeah.
Until I saw the pressures on her, and that I couldn't take. That was a bit of a breaking point for me. And that's what it became, you know. But then you'll also then find, as you start getting in the journey, that, oh, people do this together all the time.
Mm.
My sister, who I mentioned, she went through the process with her husband. Because spirit attracts spirit.
Spirit, yes.
That's just how it goes, you know. So, but yeah, obviously, then again, there's, like I said, the concerns of like career wise, what does this mean? And all of that. But you know, again, I guess we had to practice a level of faith to be like, we'll be okay. There've been people in the past who have kind of come out and expressed, you know, that, you know, they've gone through this process, they're now traditional healers, and it wasn't all that nice for them.
Yeah.
You know, that's the truth. It's happened before. I mean, it was probably 2016 when I remember Boiti, in fact,
yes,
coming out as a traditional healer, and I remember the backlash of that. I remember it because I was looking at that going, yeah, you see, and you want me to do
yeah,
what?
like I must
You
now.
know? And that's why she is and still is one of my favorite people, you know, because from a distance, what she was able to do for me in terms of mustering up the courage, you know, I'll forever be grateful for. Because if memory serves me correct, when my wife and I came out with it, I mean, we did it with a magazine cover and a wedding special,
A wedding
whatever.
special, yeah.
Everyone was like,
that
"We
looked out.
love you guys. We love African spirituality also." And it was just like,
it looks like we're going.
oh wow. Only 2 years later, and that's what I mean. We received a flooding of love.
Mm.
But again, I think what it highlighted more for me was that as a people, we are getting comfortable with us, because that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's us. We can't run from that again.
Yes.
Right? I said it earlier, interrupted history.
Yes.
So before that, this is what we were. And for me, I'm fine with that, because I'm fine with wanting an identity that attaches me to my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and all of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and even that on its own, even the wedding special artistically was such a giving of ourselves spiritually, which I think also then translated energy-wise in terms of what that final product is. So I would say spirituality and art go hand in hand.
That was my next question.
Was it?
That was my next question, because I was you bring up Boita, I'm like, okay, there's been that pattern of entertainers,
Yeah,
who have now, received the calling or went on the journey, and it's just like, for somebody who, I'll speak for somebody who's in the entertainment industry.
Yep.
I'm always just like,
How?
am I next?
Everyone all of a sudden.
Yeah, like I'm like, it's like popcorn. Popcorn. There's one goes, and then
Yeah.
that effect, and it's just like.
So you know what I think it is? It's purely timing, man. I think people have been getting the calling since. Was everyone courageous enough? Did the times allow?
But do you think maybe it is your calling that draws you towards the art?
I don't know. Quite possibly, it's just that also at the same time, I know, professionals in different, in different industries that are, I know doctors who are traditional healers. I know priests who are traditional healers, and you know what I mean? So I wouldn't dismiss it. I would say though that, being in the media space means platform.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a louder satellite. That's all it is.
Okay.
I think it's not just in this industry where all of a sudden it seems like. I think there's a spiritual awakening. I think that's what's going on.
And as a hip hop artist,
yep.
I mean, you mentioned your concerns as well, career-wise, but how much of your spirituality do you carry? Because when you think hip hop, you're thinking, it's flashy cars, it's you don't think. I mean, you have your Tupacs and all that, and Lupe, who will talk about something and change
for sure.
But nowadays it's just like this bubblegum.
Since the 90s, people have been saying nowadays it's just bubblegum.
Yeah, because I mean, it's no longer like, we don't have that. You have few and far songs where it's like, Dear Mama.
Oh, man, there's so many when Dear you're like, Mamas, dude. So you know what it is? It's just what gets to people's attention, right? It's whatever platform you use to absorb content.
Okay.
Really. I think now more than ever, people are curating what they listen to themselves.
Okay.
Right? Just by virtue of streaming and all of that, people are able to be like, Apple Music will say, since you like that, you might like this.
Yeah.
People are finding people all the time just by virtue of that. So I think that's the first thing. When it comes to hip hop, I do believe that those pressures of doing hip hop in a very specific way are pressures at a younger age, when you're still malleable.
Yeah.
When you haven't even found your voice yet. Right. So then you just look at what seems like the most entertaining, the most successful, and you kind of attempt to do that. I think as people grow, as they do and should, when they start to find their principles. I mean, some people choose to put it in the art, some people don't, and that's also fine, right? The point is, it's your choice to make, right?
True.
So for me, especially because, I mean, I'm 33 now, right? So yeah, I guess by the time I even, you know, graduated as a traditional healer, I wasn't as malleable anymore. I can't be like, oh, the peer pressure of what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So being comfortable in my identity, or at least growing in it, and then obviously year by year as time went by, became
Yeah.
something I was able to stick with and be like, okay, then this is what I choose to be. This is what I choose to lend my voice to. And especially when, I mean, you know this, when you've kind of been in the industry for long enough, even things that when you were much younger were deemed as consequence, you go, is it really?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you don't come to this event, it's gonna be
Yes, like
what's
we
gonna
live.
happen?
Yeah.
Everything will be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's that. It's just, again, now we're just talking about growth, really. So by the time I didn't have to worry about artistically what it meant. That wasn't my concern. You know, my concern was more from the business of entertainment. Because artistically, I've always been kind of putting my voice into it anyways.
Yeah.
I came in that way, you know.
Yeah.
The person who kind of discovered me was Gabomo, and he allowed that, you know. I mean, that was the only authority I knew within the space. And he was like, no, dog, I don't care what the other people are doing. Do exactly you. And I was like, oh, word? Okay. And I ran with that. And that became my foundation. So I never worried about that specifically. But what I did do after, because the next album I worked on was throughout 2018 into 2019. And that was now me having, you know, again, graduated as a traditional healer. I'm a married man now. You know, things are very different, you know, and even hence the name change. You know, I'll actually tell you a very crazy story. My stage name is Solo. Obviously, you know that. And for years and years and years, when people asked why the name Solo, my PR answer was a solo in music is a piece that isn't accompanied or assisted by anything, right? So, you know, when
Yeah.
there's a drum solo or a vocalist
It's
does a
just
solo,
that.
whatever, it's
Yeah.
just that. And coming in to the game, it was literally that. I didn't have assistance. I didn't have a click to hold on to. You know, I wasn't brought in that way.
Yeah.
And that was the PR answer. You know how I actually got the name? Because I've been called Solo since like grade 6 or something like that. I dreamt the name.
Okay.
Dreamt the name. I was probably 13 at the time. In the dream, my grandmother, so I couldn't even see her. It was a silhouette of my grandmother and her nightgown, which I always knew. And even in the dream, I could smell it, was kind of moving very quickly through this maze. And I was busy chasing it. And every time I'd get close, it would turn a corner and I wouldn't see it. But now but I'm chasing my grandmother. And every time it would turn a corner and I couldn't find her, she'd say Solo. And then I would kind of follow the voice, see her, then keep chasing. I woke up and idiotic rap nerd me goes, what a dope rap name. Right? That's actually how I got the name Solo.
That's deep.
Actually.
Powerful.
So I'm not sure how much you know about traditional healing, but essentially just before your graduation or towards the time of your graduation, you do get given a name.
Yes.
Gamela Setlosi.
Yes, I know that.
My traditional healing name, Gamalam Lobungoma, is Solo Ntsiwza mthimkhulu.
Okay.
That's the name that was given to my Gobela to say, that's the name you must give to him.
Oh, okay. So you couldn't have like.
So when she told me the name, I was like, oh, okay. So all of this is nonsense then. Because how? Like, you're saying this is lazy. You're just taking my stage name and then saying Tshiamo Banban. You know,
Yeah.
I remember I was so skeptical at the time because I was like, oh, come on, guys, try harder. And then she asked me, she was like, okay, how did you get the stage name? And in that moment, I remembered that actually in grade 6, I had this dream.
So I mean, it was
So I was actually given my igama lami lasedlozini when I was 13.
when you were 13. So
I just
you
woke up and
couldn't-
went, that's a
yeah.
nice rap name, and ran with that. So pointers, when I get to this point, I'm like, oh, well, even I've been carrying this as a stage name. It might as well be the entire
The
thing
full
because this
thing.
is what I've evolved into
Yes,
anyways,
yeah.
But that was such a great moment for me. And I think a lot of people have those moments, and they're always vary and they're always different, but it's these little things that allow you to hold on to this this path that you're on, and it also stops other people who maybe negate it or or try and make it seem like it's not real. When you have these nuggets to hold on to it, again, it's a sense of pride, it's all these different things, but it puts you nicely steadfast in your ways, which I think is great.
I mean, I'm still stuck on the dream part.
Yep, I know.
That's amazing. You once had your performance in baseline, and before you started the performance, you had Impepo and everything, right?
No, this wasn't baseline. This was
It was Newtown.
Yeah, it was at Joburg Theatre actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, I was just like looking at it, I was like, oh, okay, that's something totally different that I've seen.
Yeah.
Especially again in your fraternity or in the industry of music.
Sure.
Did you receive any backlash towards it?
No. Not an ounce. Nothing. Everything was great. Everyone high-fived me. It's fine. Everything's okay. I'm saying it in a very nonchalant way to also say this, and maybe to remind you. I'm a man in entertainment. There's very little backlash.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
If we're keeping it 100.
Yeah.
What was the worst that was going to happen? Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I walk this path.
Yeah.
And where I can, I don't have to do it myself because she's already that way, but I remind to do it all the time as well. Don't forget, you can literally do anything, because what's going to happen, honestly, it's just that, unfortunately for her, things like this can have backlash. We brought up the example of Boiti not so long ago.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's what it is. Like, inherently, there's no, and even if it was there, it's not brought to my doorstep. People know better than to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So I am at, I have 3 segments in the show, right?
Okay.
The first segment is the gag is, right?
What?
The gag.
All right.
So the gag is where you get to, so what a gag is rumor.
Cool.
So whatever rumor there is out there and you feel like, can I just address it, crush it now?
Oh, wow.
So I play the jingle and then you give us your gag and then we sort it out, it's done, it's dealt with. And then we'll lead into a second segment. Do you have a gag?
I'm trying to think if I have a gag.
And then after the gag is, we have from my lips to your ears.
Okay.
Which is your parting words. So the show is called The Transcript because we're transcribing a specific topic or a life or whatever. So at the end, this is how you would now conclude everything from your lips to someone else's ears.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I'll play the gag.
That one's easier. Gag. What rumor is there? Is there a rumor you might know that I can?
I don't. I don't.
I don't know rumors about me. Also, who would tell me?
No, but whatever you think, I don't know. I don't know. I've never heard any.
I don't.
Yeah,
I mean, yo, man, really, like, you know me. You know what I mean? I do my work, I go home. That's my whole thing. Where are you gonna find an opportunity for?
Okay, so clearly there's no gag then.
We can. I'm sorry, guys. Yo, I feel like I should be more of a rebel.
I mean, that's. I think also that's a protection. You know, once you
Yeah,
have,
man. There's a level of peace that like I make sure I have as a measure. You know,
yeah.
yeah. I think that's what it is, and this is what it results in. No gags. I'm sorry, guys.
So okay, let's move. I'm gonna play the jingle for from my lips to your ears, and then
Okay.
you can give your thing.
From my lips to your ears.
You're never as bad as they say you are. You're never as good as they say you are. Work while you're scared. Work while you're in doubt. Yep.
Oh wow, that's deep.
That's
You're never as bad as they say you are. You're
Yep.
never as good as they say you are.
Yep.
And then for everything.
Work while you're scared and work while you're in doubt. So essentially, these two phrases are what I use as my. Remember when I told you that I do my best before I go into like a writing session to kind of detach from anything egoic, remove all ego, because again, it becomes clutter for me. That's just me and my process. So what I do is so that I'm not hanging on to like previous accolades and feeling like, yeah, but I've done this and this and this, therefore I don't have to go as hard. I remind myself that fine, I'm not as bad as so the phrase you're not as bad as they say you are, you're not as good as they say you are means even for like your biggest fans who give you all the love in the world, you're not as good as that. But your biggest critics who say you're trash, you're not as bad as that either. You live in this neutral space where as long as you don't get comfortable, you'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
And that's what that phrase is really for. You know, it's to not allow one to break themselves down, but not allow someone to have a big head either.
Yeah.
You're not as bad as they say you are. You're not as good as they say you are.
Stay grounded, basically.
Pretty much. And then the second phrase is really just for anybody who deals with imposter syndrome. Work while you're scared, work while you're in doubt. So even if you're questioning yourself, work, do it.
And I think that's when the magic happens.
I think so.
So sort of in conclusion, how
Yep.
do you or how do you own your season?
Oh wow. You know, I'm not a big fan of, and trust me, I'm still answering your question. I'm not a big fan of this season. I'm not a summer guy. I've always felt like spring and summer are reveal time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the cold because that's grind time. And I'm such a grinder, man. I'm such a worker that's where I really shine. When I say I'm living the rap life, my rap life is day to day in studio working at harnessing this thing. It's not really the lifestyle.
Okay.
It's not the reveal. It's not summertime.
Yeah, it's not
Hey,
the
summertime.
stage. Yeah, because everyone wants to be on stage.
Everyone wants to be like, yo, now it's time to show everything.
Yes,
You
we
know?
must see it now.
You know, here's my summer body. Here's my summer smash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, so how, I guess in theory, how I prepare for the season is I treat every changing season like winter. Grind.
And with that said, thank you so much, Solo. I'm gonna say it, Solo.
Ntsiwza.
Oh, just Ntsiwza.
Ntsiwza.
Ntsiwza mthimkhulu.
There it is.
And then do I say mkhulu after?
You can if you like.
Chokos.
Tours.
So thank you so much for coming in and having this conversation, having this conversation with me here right here on the transcript. It's always great to have people who are just, and to be honest, how I even thought of you was, I was sitting, okay, I had the topic, and I think the process you go through with your music is the same thing with my topics. Like I sit and I'm like, okay, I want to have a conversation. Then the conversation comes up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, great. Now we have the time, we have the theme, who. And then I sit and I'm like, okay, maybe this person. But with you I was sitting and I was like, okay, cool, Brenda. Right? And then on some day, I woke up and I said, Solo.
Woke up, you said.
It's
That's
just like
interesting.
solo, actually, So, and I think it's very important to be able to listen to, I don't know how, to that
Intuition?
voice, intuition,
Absolutely.
when something says, do this,
Yep.
just do it, So thank you so much.
Only a
And-
pleasure. I hope we can do it again.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Any up and comings?
Grinding.
We're grinding.
We're grinding.
Okay.
Grinding. Port of LNG, the music, alles.
The port is doing things, eh?
We really are.
The port is doing that cover.
Shout out.
But yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And you're still listening to the transcript with me, Tshiamo. Till next time, outies.
With every moment, you are creating an impression. Make sure it's an impression by design. This is the transcript with Tshiamo. Your media, where you are.